Imagine a 7-year-old walking into a courtroom, alone, facing the fate of his father's entire life. No lawyer, no backup, just a small child standing before a room full of strangers. What he says next shocks everyone, judges, lawyers, and the jury alike, leaving the entire courtroom in tears. You will not believe how one child's words change everything in just minutes, and reveal a secret that no adult dared to speak. Stay with this video till the very end, because this story will leave you speechless, inspired, and questioning everything you thought you knew about courage. And before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and join our journey, because stories like this deserve to be shared with the world. The courtroom was silent. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long, rigid shadows across the polished floor. A small figure stood at the center of it all. A 7-year-old boy, wearing a shirt too big for his tiny frame. His fingers gripped the edge of the witness stand, knuckles white. The smell of old wood and polished leather filled his nose. He could hear his own heartbeat, loud and steady, echoing in his ears. The judge looked down at him with surprise, her eyes wide behind thick glasses. People in the courtroom shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Whispers floated across the air, soft but tense. The boy cleared his throat. He straightened his back, trying to appear taller than he was. "My father is not a bad man," he said. His voice was small, but it carried across the room. He looked directly at the jury, his eyes shimmering with determination. "I know what happened, and it was not his fault." A wave of silence fell over the room. The prosecution shuffled papers nervously. The boy took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every eye upon him. "My father works hard. He never gives up. He teaches me to do what is right, even when it is hard." Tears started forming in the corners of his eyes. The judge leaned forward, curiosity and disbelief etched across her face. "I watched everything," the boy continued, his small voice steady now. "I saw who really caused the trouble. I saw who hurt people. It was not my father." A murmur ran through the courtroom. The air felt heavy, almost thick with tension. The boy paused, glancing at his father, who sat frozen, holding back tears. "I am only 7, he said, his words trembling. "But I understand right and wrong. And I know my father is innocent." Someone sniffled in the back of the room. The bailiff shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the jury. The boy swallowed hard, the taste of fear bitter in his mouth. "My father taught me to speak the truth," he said. "And I will. I will not let anyone lie about him." A single tear rolled down his cheek. He looked around the courtroom, seeing faces that softened, some even wet with tears. "My father is my hero," he whispered. The judge's eyes glistened as she leaned back in her chair. The boy straightened again, feeling a mixture of fear and courage he had never known. "My words are small," he said, voice cracking. "But they are the truth." A hush settled. Every breath in the room seemed louder than before. The boy glanced at his father again, then at the people in the courtroom. He could feel their judgment, their doubt, and their hope, all at once. "I am here to tell you the truth," he said, voice growing stronger. "I know the truth. And the truth will set my father free." The room held its breath, waiting for what would come next. The boy's hands trembled slightly on the wooden stand. But his gaze remained firm, unwavering, filled with a courage far beyond his years. The room seemed to shrink around him. Every eye was fixed on a 7-year-old boy who stood braver than most adults could ever be. His father's hands trembled in his lap. He could feel his father's fear, his shame, his desperation, and it sent a surge of determination through him. The prosecutor leaned forward, frowning, clearly unsure how to handle this unexpected turn. "Are you sure of what you saw, young man?" she asked, voice firm, but soft enough to not intimidate him further. The boy nodded, his lips pressed tightly together. "I saw everything," he said, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "The man who caused the fire, it was not my father. It was the other man. He wanted to hurt us. He wanted to hurt everyone. I was hiding, but I watched him do it. I heard him laughing." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. The judge's hand tightened around her gavel. The jurors leaned forward, eyes wide, notebooks forgotten. The father's eyes filled with disbelief and hope. The boy paused, taking a shaky breath, feeling every heartbeat pounding through his small chest. I was scared, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. But I remembered what my father told me. Always tell the truth. Always stand for what is right, even if you are afraid. The judge's eyes softened, and her hand trembled slightly as she rested it on the bench. The prosecution's face paled. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. The boy looked straight at the man accused of starting the fire, whose smug confidence had filled the room just moments before. You are not brave, the boy said, voice shaking but firm. You lied. You hurt people. You burned our home. You made my father take blame for something he did not do. I saw it. I heard it. I know the truth. Sweat glistened on the man's forehead. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. The jurors exchanged glances, doubt creeping into their eyes for the first time. The father leaned forward, tears streaming freely down his face. He could not speak, could not move. His son, at 7 years old, had just done what no adult could in that courtroom. He had told the truth. The boy's voice broke slightly, emotion coursing through him like lightning. My father taught me right from wrong, he said. He teaches me to be honest. To protect people I love. And he loves everyone. He would never hurt anyone. He is good. The room was silent, almost painfully so. Even the buzzing fluorescent lights seemed to pause in respect. The judge's gavel hovered, her eyes misted with tears she could not hold back. Is there anything else you want to say? She asked softly. The boy's lips trembled. He swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. I just want everyone to know, my father is not guilty, he said. I want everyone to know the truth. A single sob broke from the back of the room. The courtroom clerk wiped her eyes. The judge leaned forward, voice trembling. Your courage is extraordinary, she said. But this is serious. You must swear your words are true. The boy nodded, standing taller than ever, his small frame radiating something larger than life. I swear, he said. I swear my words are true. A hush fell over the courtroom. The air was heavy, every breath tense with anticipation. The man who had been smug now sat frozen, his face pale, beads of sweat running down his temple. The jurors whispered among themselves, glancing at each other, uncertainty replacing their previous certainty. The boy's father could barely breathe. He wanted to rush forward, to hug his son, to tell him he was the bravest person he had ever known. But he stayed seated, tears streaming, heart pounding with pride and fear. The boy looked at him, voice barely above a whisper. I am here for you, father, he said. I will not let anyone lie about you. The judge's gavel came down sharply, cutting through the silence. Order, she said, her voice firm but shaken. This court will take a brief recess while we review these new statements. The murmurs grew louder, the tension crackling like electricity in the air. People could not stop staring at the boy. Some cried openly, moved by his bravery. Others whispered about the miracle of his words, the sheer impossibility of a child standing alone against injustice. The father sat back, overwhelmed, barely able to contain his sobs. His son had saved him. A shiver ran down the spine of everyone present. The boy had done what lawyers, witnesses, and adults could not. He had pierced the walls of doubt, cut through lies, and revealed the raw, unshakable truth. The man accused of the crime shifted nervously, finally realizing the room had turned against him. The jury huddled, glances exchanged, their minds racing to make sense of what they had just witnessed. The father's hands trembled uncontrollably, tears washing over his face. He could not speak. He could only watch his son, small but mighty, standing as a shield between him and the injustice that had threatened to destroy their lives. The boy's voice, still trembling, whispered one final line before the recess. I love you, father, he said. And in that courtroom, a 7-year-old child had changed the course of everything. The room was frozen in awe, disbelief, and overwhelming emotion. No one could move. No one could speak. And yet, the truth had been spoken. The courtroom emptied slowly, whispers trailing behind every step. The boy stayed standing, small but unwavering, staring at his father with eyes full of courage and love. The polished floor reflected the sunlight, blinding in its brightness, contrasting sharply with the fear that still gripped him. He felt the weight of every glance, every breath, every judgment that had been cast upon them before. His father walked over, hands shaking, bending down to brush hair from his son's forehead. "You were amazing," he whispered, voice cracking with tears. The boy nodded, but he could feel a knot of tension deep in his stomach. He had spoken the truth, but the final verdict still hung in the air like a storm cloud. Back in the courtroom, the jurors filed in, faces solemn. The man who had caused the fire sat rigidly, trying to appear calm, but sweat ran down his temples and his fingers fidgeted nervously. The boy's mother, seated quietly, reached for her son's hand, squeezing it tightly. "You are our hero," she whispered. The judge took her seat, gavel in hand, her eyes scanning every person in the room. She cleared her throat. "We have reviewed the statements given today," she said, voice steady but heavy with emotion. The boy's father gripped the edge of the bench, knuckles white. The air was thick, almost suffocating, as if everyone in the room could feel the tension pressing down on them. The jury foreman stood, a stack of papers trembling slightly in his hands. "Your Honor," he began, voice wavering, "the jury has reached a verdict." Every heartbeat in the room seemed magnified. The boy felt his knees weaken, but he forced himself to stand tall. The room was completely silent. Even the faintest rustle of paper sounded deafening. The foreman took a deep breath. "We find the defendant not guilty." A collective gasp erupted. Some people sobbed openly. Some dropped their heads in disbelief. The boy's father could not move. His chest heaved with the force of the emotions crashing through him. He looked at his son, tears streaming freely, and whispered, "You saved my life." The boy's lips trembled. "I told the truth," he said softly, "that was all I could do." The judge's eyes glistened as she leaned forward. "This courtroom has witnessed a bravery we rarely see," she said. "Your words, young man, have not only saved your father, but reminded us all of the power of truth and courage." The father rose, walking carefully toward his son, lifting him into a hug. The boy clung tightly, feeling the warmth and relief of his father's embrace. The courtroom, once tense and heavy with fear, now seemed to glow with the release of emotions long held back. The man who had caused the fire sat slumped, defeated, unable to meet anyone's gaze. He had been exposed not by lawyers or witnesses, but by a 7-year-old child's unwavering courage. The jurors filed out slowly, shaking their heads, still processing the extraordinary event they had just witnessed. The boy let go of his father, wiping tears from his cheeks. "I was scared," he admitted, voice small. "But I had to do it. I could not let anyone lie about you." The father cupped his son's face, holding him close. "You are stronger than anyone I know," he said. "And braver than I ever imagined." The judge called the courtroom to order one final time. "This case is concluded," she said. "But the memory of today, the courage shown, will remain with us all." Outside the courtroom, sunlight poured down in golden streams. The boy stepped forward, tiny hands clasped tightly, feeling the warmth of the world as if it recognized his bravery. His father held his hand firmly, a silent promise that nothing could ever break the bond they shared. People gathered outside, staring at the boy with awe. News cameras flashed, capturing the small figure who had done what adults could not. Some whispered, some cried, some clutched their chests, moved beyond words. The boy's heart pounded, but not with fear. He felt pride, relief, and a strange new sense of strength. "This is the first time I felt like I could make a difference," he said quietly, looking up at his father. His father smiled, tears still streaming. "You already have," he replied. "I will never forget this. Neither will anyone here." The boy glanced at the courthouse steps, noticing the swirl of reporters and onlookers, but he only focused on the man who mattered most. His father, a man once broken by false accusations, now free because of the unwavering words of his child. The crowd's applause erupted suddenly, not just for the verdict, but for the courage of a 7-year-old boy who had changed everything. The boy closed his eyes briefly, letting the sun warm his face, feeling every second of this moment sink into his bones. He had faced fear, injustice, and the unknown. And he had stood tall. A single tear rolled down his cheek, catching the sunlight, shining like a diamond. The father knelt beside him, pulling him close once more. "You saved more than just my life," he whispered. "You saved hope. You saved truth. You saved us all." The boy nodded silently, feeling the weight of those words. He was small. But today, he had moved mountains. He had faced the storm. And he had emerged victorious. The courthouse doors opened wide, the fresh air rushing in. The boy and his father stepped outside together. Every eye followed them, every heart touched by the story of courage, truth, and love. The city seemed to pause, as if acknowledging the extraordinary act of a child who refused to let injustice prevail. The boy glanced at his father one last time, his lips trembling, eyes glistening. "I love you, Father," he said again. "And I will always be with you." The father held his son tight, looking around at the world that had watched him be saved by a 7-year-old hero. For the first time in days, he could breathe. He could hope. And he could finally smile. The boy, small yet mighty, had not only saved his father. He had reminded the world of something far greater than fear, far greater than lies. He had reminded them all that courage can come in the smallest of forms, and the strongest of hearts can be wrapped in the smallest of bodies. The sun shone brighter that day, as if the universe itself wanted to honor the bravery of a 7-year-old child who refused to stay silent. And as they walked down the courthouse steps, hand in hand, the world watched, remembered, and could not help but weep. The courthouse doors closed behind them with a heavy, final thud. Outside, the air felt different, sharper, charged with the aftermath of something extraordinary. The boy clutched his father's hand tightly, feeling the warmth of reassurance, but also the trembling excitement that surged through him. Crowds had gathered outside, whispers and murmurs turning into odd conversations. Reporters flashed their cameras, capturing the image of a small boy with eyes brighter than the sun. The father leaned down, brushing his son's hair from his forehead. "You have no idea what you did today," he said, voice raw with emotion. "I will never forget it. The world will never forget it." The boy looked up at him, lips quivering, the weight of what had happened pressing down on him. "I just told the truth," he said softly, almost to himself. "But, it felt like the whole world was watching me." The father knelt, bringing their faces close together. "It was the whole world," he admitted, tears streaming down his face. "But you did not flinch. You did not hesitate. You faced them all, alone if you had to save me." A silence settled over them, thick and powerful. The city noise seemed distant, muffled, like a dream. Every heartbeat in the boy's chest felt amplified, every breath a reminder that he had survived fear and injustice. "You made them see the truth," the father continued, gripping his son's shoulders firmly. "You made them feel what we felt. That is courage. That is bravery. That is love." The boy felt a shiver run down his spine. He had not realized how heavy courage could feel, how terrifying it could be to stand alone in front of so many eyes. And yet, he had done it. A sudden commotion drew their attention. The man who had caused the fire emerged from the courthouse, flanked by his lawyer. His face was pale, almost ghostly. He tried to make eye contact with the boy's father, but his gaze faltered under the weight of shame and exposure. The boy's small hand tightened on his father's. He did not need to look at him. He could feel the fear and guilt radiating off him like heat from a fire. For a moment, the man's lips twitched, as if he wanted to say something. But the words never came. Instead, he turned and walked away, swallowed by the murmuring crowd, defeated and exposed. The father exhaled sharply, relief flooding him like a tidal wave. "I cannot believe this happened," he said, voice shaking. "I cannot believe you did this. You were alone, and yet you stood stronger than anyone in that room." The boy looked down at his shoes, small feet barely fitting in worn sneakers. I was scared," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "But I remembered what you told me. Always speak the truth. Always protect those you love." The father's lips trembled. He could not stop the tears anymore. He pulled his son into a hug so tight it felt as though he could never let go. "I am so proud of you," he whispered repeatedly. The boy hugged back, feeling the enormous relief that had been building inside him for hours, maybe days. They walked slowly down the courthouse steps, the world watching, waiting, stunned into silence. Every step felt surreal. The father could feel every eye on them, every heartbeat of the crowd syncing with the boy's own racing pulse. He could feel the weight of judgment, the relief of justice, the awe of strangers, all mingling in the air like electricity. A reporter called out, asking questions, but the father shook his head, protective, letting his son lead the way. The boy, small and tired, looked up at the sky. It was clear, blue, and impossibly bright. For the first time in days, he could breathe without the sharp taste of fear in his mouth. He could feel the warmth of the sun on his face, like the world was acknowledging his courage. People in the crowd began to clap, softly at first, then louder. Some wiped their eyes, some whispered prayers of gratitude, and some simply stared, unable to comprehend the bravery of a 7-year-old child. The father knelt once more, pulling his son close. "You saved more than just me," he said, voice breaking. "You saved hope. You reminded everyone that truth and courage matter. You reminded them that love is stronger than fear." The boy's eyes filled with tears, shimmering like morning dew. "I only did what I had to do," he said softly. "But it feels like I did something huge." The father smiled through his tears. "Because you did," he said simply. "And no one will ever forget it." They walked together through the crowd, people stepping aside, some reaching out to shake the boy's hand, others simply watching in reverent silence. Every step was heavy with emotion, every breath filled with the kind of awe that words cannot capture. The boy could feel it, the change he had created, the lives he had touched, the injustice he had undone. For a child, it was almost too much to bear. And yet, he felt a strange peace settle over him. A sense that, even in a world filled with danger and lies, courage and truth could still triumph. The father squeezed his son's hand, a silent promise that nothing would ever harm him again. "I love you," the father whispered again. "I will never let anything hurt you, ever." The boy looked up at him, eyes shining, lips trembling. "I love you too," he said. "And I will always be with you." The crowd began to disperse, leaving them alone for the first time since the trial began. The boy's small hand rested in his father's, their fingers intertwined, a bond forged in fire, fear, and unwavering courage. The sun continued to shine, golden and bright, illuminating a world that had just witnessed something extraordinary. A 7-year-old boy had faced the storm. A 7-year-old boy had spoken truth to power. A 7-year-old boy had changed everything. And as they walked home, hand in hand, the father realized something he had not known before. Bravery is not measured by size or age. Bravery is measured by the heart. And today, the bravest heart in the world belonged to his son. The boy, small but mighty, looked up at the sky one last time, feeling the wind on his face. He had faced fear. He had faced injustice. And he had triumphed. And in that triumph, he knew one thing for certain. No matter what lay ahead, they could face it together. Because love, truth, and courage were stronger than anything the world could throw at them. And a 7-year-old boy had proven it. The night fell over the city, draping the streets in shadows that seemed longer and darker than usual. The boy and his father walked quietly, their hands still tightly clasped, the echoes of the day's events reverberating in every step. The air smelled of rain yet to fall, sharp and electric, making the small boy shiver despite the warmth of his father's hand. He could feel the weight of every eye that had watched him today, every whisper, every gasp, every tear shed in the courtroom. Even now, it pressed on his chest like a stone, a reminder that courage comes with a price. The father stopped, looking down at his son. "You were unbelievable today," he said, voice low but shaking. The boy looked up at him, eyes glistening, cheeks wet with tears that refused to stop flowing. "I was scared," he admitted, voice trembling, "but I could not let them take you away. I could not let lies win." The father knelt, holding his son's small face between his hands. "I know," he said softly, "and that is why you are the bravest person I have ever known. You have more courage than anyone in this city." The boy swallowed hard, the words heavy and almost too big for him to carry. "I do not feel brave," he said quietly. "I feel alone sometimes, even when I am not. Everyone looked at me like I was too small to do anything." The father pulled him into a hug, holding him close as the city noises hummed around them. "You were never alone," he said, voice firm and loving. "You had truth on your side. You had your heart. And you had me." The boy breathed in, trying to absorb the comfort in his father's arms, but the shadows around them seemed to stretch further, dark and whispering. He remembered the moment in the courtroom when everyone had watched him, silent and expectant, waiting for him to fail. The taste of fear still lingered, bitter and metallic on his tongue. The memory made him shiver. "But what if it happens again?" he asked softly. "What if someone else tries to hurt us, or lie about us, or take everything from us again?" The father tightened his grip, a steel resolve in his eyes. "Then we face it," he said, voice unwavering. "Together. Just like today. You have shown the world what courage looks like, and no one can take that away from us." The boy nodded slowly, trying to absorb the strength in his father's words. They continued walking, past empty streets and flickering streetlights. The night seemed calm, but the boy could feel the tension in the shadows, like the city itself was holding its breath. A sudden sound made him freeze, a low, dragging noise, distant but deliberate. He clutched his father's hand tighter, heart hammering. The father's eyes scanned the street, narrowing. "Stay close," he whispered, voice low and protective. The sound grew louder, echoing off the brick walls of the alley they were passing. The boy's stomach twisted in fear, memories of the courtroom flashed through his mind, the lies, the fire, the betrayal. He wanted to run, to hide, but he could not let go of his father's hand. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, face hidden, movements deliberate and threatening. The boy's heart stopped. The father stepped in front of him, chest heaving, eyes locked on the approaching figure. "Who are you?" the father demanded, voice firm but steady. The figure paused, then stepped into the light. It was a messenger, a man with a trembling envelope in hand. The father exhaled slowly, tension leaving his shoulders, but the boy did not move immediately. His senses remained alert, sharp, as if the day's bravery had permanently etched vigilance into his bones. The man handed the envelope to the father, whispering urgently, "It is from the one who tried to frame you. He knows you are free, but he is not done. He wants to settle the score." The boy felt his chest tighten. His small hands gripped his father's arm. "What does it mean?" he asked, voice barely audible. "It means," the father said, voice hardening, "that our fight is not over. It means we must be ready." The boy nodded, fear and determination mingling in his chest like fire and ice. He remembered the courtroom, the truth, the power of his own words. He realized that courage was not just for the big moments. Courage was for every step afterward, for every shadow, for every threat, for every unknown. The father opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single note, scrawled in jagged handwriting, "You think it is over. It is not. You have not seen the last of me." The boy felt a shiver crawl down his spine. Fear gripped him, but it was mixed with a strange clarity. He had faced fear before. He had stood in front of the entire courtroom, alone, and made the truth matter. He could do it again. The father looked down at him, eyes filled with pride and a fierce protectiveness. "We will face it," he said, voice strong. "Together. Always together." The boy nodded, small shoulders straightening, chest rising. He could feel courage growing inside him, stronger than before, tempered in fire and hardened in truth. The night felt endless, the shadows deeper, but the boy and his father walked forward, step by step, ready for whatever storm awaited them. And in that darkness, they were not afraid. Because they had something stronger than fear, stronger than lies, stronger than the world itself. They had each other. They had truth. They had courage. And they were ready. The city whispered around them, every flickering light a reminder of what had been faced and survived. The boy glanced at his father, eyes fierce with determination. "I am not afraid," he said, voice steady and small but full of power. "You cannot scare me." The father smiled, tears glistening in his eyes. "That is my boy," he said, voice full of love and pride. And together, they disappeared into the night, ready to confront the darkness, ready to face whatever lay ahead, stronger and braver than anyone could imagine. The shadows moved, but the light in their hearts could not be dimmed. The boy had proven that courage is never measured by size. It is measured by the heart, by truth, and by love. And tonight, the heart of a 7-year-old boy shone brighter than any darkness the world could throw at them. The first light of dawn broke over the city, casting golden streaks across the quiet streets. The boy and his father walked slowly, the events of the past days still heavy in their hearts, yet lighter somehow because the truth had been revealed. Every shadow now seemed less threatening, every sound less ominous. The envelope from the man who had tried to destroy them was gone, taken by the authorities, but its warning still lingered in the boy's mind. He looked up at his father, small hands still clasped tightly around his, and saw the same determination mirrored in those eyes. "We have faced so much," the boy whispered, voice trembling but strong. "And we are still standing." The father knelt down, holding his son's face in his hands. "You are my hero," he said, voice breaking. "You saved not just me, but our entire family, our home, and our hope. You have shown the world what courage really looks like." The boy felt a swell of emotion, tears streaming down his cheeks, not from fear, but from a deep, overwhelming sense of love and pride. "It was not just me," he said softly. "It was you too, Father. You taught me to stand for the truth, even when the world is against you." They embraced, tightly, the kind of hug that carried the weight of every hardship they had faced and the relief of survival. Somewhere in the city, the sun rose fully, illuminating their path as if the world itself was celebrating their courage. The boy took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face, the strength of his father at his side, and a newfound certainty in his heart. He knew that whatever challenges came next, he could face them. The court had cleared his father. Justice had been served, and the truth had triumphed. But beyond that, the boy realized something far more powerful. Bravery, love, and truth were unstoppable when held in a single heart willing to fight for what is right. The father looked at his son, eyes filled with tears yet shining with pride. "You have changed the world today," he said softly. "And one day, you will change it even more." The boy nodded, small shoulders trembling, yet full of resolve. "I will always protect the truth," he said quietly. "And I will always stand by you, Father." For a moment, silence fell over them, the kind of silence that carries the weight of everything that has been endured, everything that has been lost, and everything that has been won. The boy's gaze drifted to the horizon. He could see the city waking up, unaware of the courage that had reshaped it just hours before. But he would never forget. His father would never forget. And those who had witnessed the courtroom that day would remember forever. A soft wind blew through the street, tugging gently at the boy's hair, carrying with it the faint scent of rain and new beginnings. The father bent down, brushing a tear from his son's cheek. "You are my heart," he whispered. "My reason to be brave, my reason to never give up." The boy hugged him once more, feeling the strength and love that had carried them through fear, lies, and danger. And as they walked together into the rising sun, hand in hand, the boy knew one thing clearly: the smallest voices can make the biggest impact. The smallest hearts can hold the greatest courage. And sometimes, the world's most powerful heroes are only 7 years old. A soft smile spread across the father's face. "No matter what comes next," he said, "we will face it together." The boy looked up, eyes shining with determination and hope. "Yes, Father," he said firmly. "And we will never stop fighting for truth and love." The camera of life seemed to pull back, showing them walking into the morning light, leaving behind the shadows, the fear, and the lies. They had survived. They had triumphed. And they had done it together. For anyone watching, this story is more than just words. It is a reminder that courage has no age, love has no limit, and truth always finds its way. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in the power of bravery, and if you felt every emotion along with this incredible boy and his father, then make sure you join this journey. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and be part of every story where courage, love, and hope shine brighter than any darkness. Because together, we can witness heroes, big or small, changing the world every single day. Hit that subscribe button and never miss a story that will move your heart and inspire your soul.